Well, welcome to the contractor commute. So anyway, yeah.
It's like whenever we're just talking, having a good time, then you're like, oh, ready to go. It's like the little thing. We're like, what do we do?
I would be a terrible actor. Like they would just run me off the set.
Yeah.
But yeah. Some people are natural. Like I have a sister who's just amazing in front of a camera. Just just so natural. And just turn it on. And for me, I'm like, it's the opposite of that. Yeah. I'm an authentic and real person until I'm trying to put on a show. Yeah. And then I'm like, I don't know what to do. Send me back to acting school.
Yeah. That's why our podcast is a work in progress.
Yeah. So basically why we'll never make it.
Yeah.
Just don't have what it takes.
Yeah.
Speaking of struggling, so many people that we know or have talked to are struggling in their businesses, barely making it. Mm-hmm. And, it's sad to see that. And I think sometimes that culminates in somebody going out of business. Mm-hmm. And we just talked about this earlier. Like sometimes that's the merciful thing. Like that's less stressful than to be running something and carrying it for so long. Like sometimes the closure point is relieving.
Yeah, because you can adjust and find something else.
Find another job.
Yeah. A solution to the pain.
The anatomy of failure is often based in the motivations for why we started our business in the first place. Mm-hmm. So today,
that's a good quote.
We're going to unpack.
That's a quote by Ben Walsh. I'm like, that's noteworthy. Can you say it again? It's just that good.
The anatomy of failure. I probably won't say it the same way. The anatomy of failure is often the motivation of why we start a business in the first place. Mm. So let's go into some of the unhealthy motivators.
Yeah.
And why most businesses start is because of money pressure. Yeah. So number one reason somebody goes off into their own is because they have this thought, I need to make money and make it fast. Yeah. And so therefore I'll start my own business. They see other opportunities around them. We can be so rich.
Shortcut.
Shortcut.
Right? I love
it's going to be so
looking
amazing.
for shortcuts.
The other motivator is a part of money. Could be debt, could be medical bills that need to be paid, or medical emergencies, or just this feeling of like, I want to make it. I want to have money. Yeah. Maybe you came from a family that didn't have money, and you feel like this is the opportunity for you to show that, I can make money.
Yeah, I want to be rich, get rich quick scheme kind of deal, right?
And that might even be based on what you perceive to be hard work, where it's not like it's not a Ponzi scheme. It's not like you're making money doing something nefarious. Mm-hmm. Like it's a really like solid, like I can do it.
Yeah.
And what everyone else took 20 years to do, you're going to do it in 2 months. Mm-hmm. And so I think what this results in, this unhealthy motivator, if it's primarily money motivated, is there's this short-term decision making. Yeah. Where everything has to be quick. It has to be sort of like yesterday type of thing. And we were talking, we've talked about this all the time because it is such a human nature to think things can be much easier than they really are.
Oh, yeah. Oversimplifying is so much fun, right?
Yes.
Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, oh, how hard could it be?
Right. Yeah. We want something to be easy, so therefore it is easy.
Speak it into existence.
Yes. I mean, can you think of something that just comes off the top of your head, something that...
Oh, I have dreams all the time that are like, oh, it would be so simple to start a funeral home, and I know nothing about I don't want to pick up dead bodies. You know? Like there's a lot of logistics behind. Yeah, it's just funny. It's like having any kind of vision. I'm like, oh, I could start a contracting business. My husband could. He has no experience in a construct. He's never actually built anything. But I'm like being around, the industry or whatever. I think when you're around things, it makes it seem so simple. Mm-hmm. Like what
you're
other
seeing
people
success,
have. Yeah.
So therefore it seems very replicable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funeral home. Interesting idea. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like one of those things that often gets kind of neglected.
Yeah. Nobody wants to start a funeral home.
Yeah. But,
Yeah. Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted on if that ever happens.
Yeah. Hang your shingle. I think this unhealthy motivator of money also builds this sort of reactive decision making as well, because things are not necessarily well thought out or planned because there's this desperation. You can accept bad deals. It sort of leads to poor planning, probably.
Yeah, I think too, money being the motivator and like the pressure of money, it results in impatience, right? And so businesses take time to get profitable. We've seen that. We know that. We've seen that. And, you've seen that more than I have because you've run more businesses. But it takes time to actually build and develop something. And so that get rich quick or, the shortcut to success kind of mindset is pretty flawed in the beginning.
And people get so burnt out. It's so shallow.
So true.
If money was the only motivator we had in starting Congenius, even would quit after a year.
Yeah,
because there wasn't any money.
Right.
I mean, there's easier ways to make money.
So true. Go work for somebody else and make money. You know,
there
whatever.
You go.
Yeah.
There's opportunity.
Totally.
Yeah, and so you're bringing up the reality is that businesses require money.
Mm-hmm.
They require time. They require patience and hard work and effort before they're you realize
there's an investment in building a business prior to making money, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we have this unhealthy motivator of just money, money, money.
Yeah, what are some better motivations?
Starting a business with a long game in mind of just like, what is it that, as far as a sustainable long-term business that we're solving a real problem and we're meeting a need, we're serving other people as opposed to just making a quick buck.
Yeah, I think we talk about that too, of like, how can we actually make an impact in a space that has a need or a problem that needs solved? So you mentioned problem solving, but I think the impact side of it is so much deeper than, I think you say this quote often, if you go after the impact, the money follows.
Yes.
Right? So like if you actually seek to solve a problem and you do it successfully, then the money will come.
Be a product or service driven company, not a money driven company.
Yeah.
I was reading a quote from somebody, and I wish I could remember who it was, but he was saying that you have whole teams of people in big businesses that are running reports and analytics and metrics of, if this number, that number, and we can improve this number by cutting that. And you lose the vision for what a service or product can be. And in a small business context, you don't have a team of people doing that. Right. You do that.
Right.
You're just running the quick math saying, we can be so rich if this happened.
Right.
Instead of being like, no, we're going to provide an amazing service. Yes, you need to learn about how to charge. You need to learn how to estimate all these things. Right. But nonetheless, the money follows the service, the product.
Yeah. The excellent customer service side of things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this, the whole point behind this is like, hey, it's okay if you're recognizing, hey, maybe I have a little bit of an unhealthy motivation, but like actually shifting to more of like a positive or a better motivation side of things, it will result in fulfillment, versus like a striving, just constantly trying to make it, constantly trying to, like, you'll actually be fulfilled in your day to day if you're going somewhere for a purpose, right?
So good.
To like make impact.
And it also, somebody I know started a business, and every time I talk to him, we will be so rich, bro, kind of a mentality. And if this thing, buku dollars is going to be incredible. We're going to be flying around our own helicopters. And it's like, to me, that's such a shallow motivator, but to him, it was the motivation behind starting a business. So he started a business, and a year later, he was bankrupt. And I think, I don't say that to put him down because but it's nonetheless, it's an aspect of, I can relate to that too. And like when I started my first business, that's a temptation because you do the math, you see the dollars. And I think, but what doesn't take you through any of the tough times. And it's such a shallow motivator in the sense of when times get tough, you're not making money. So therefore jump out, get out, do something else.
Work. It doesn't work.
There's quicker ways to make money like we talked about earlier. So I think having a clear value proposition is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that in that scenario, maybe that person just didn't know what they didn't know, didn't, take the time to methodically plan, or what do you think or was it solely the money motivation?
Well, the tenacity to stick with something through the tough times. If you set the expectation going into it, this will be hard. This will be challenging. It might take a while.
Yeah.
If that was the expectation going into it, you'd have a different level of resourcefulness and even being like, oh, well, we have to shift, we have to pivot, we have to change, we have to strategize, we have to plan differently. So I don't know if we did a lot of planning early on in our business.
Yeah.
And that early planning, none of it was really accurate to the level of minute detail. Yeah. But we learned from the initial planning and pivoted and changed and improved upon the plans.
Right. You still have to have a plan.
Right. But the core vision of why we exist and what we're doing is the same.
Yeah. That's good.
But all of those pivots of like, well, money is not as easy to come by as we thought it would be. So therefore we have to do something else.
Yeah.
We can't spend money like we thought we could.
Yeah, for sure.
So we had to change.
Yeah.
But that level of resourcefulness comes from passion around building something bigger than dollars. Like the dollars following the passion for the product, for the service that you're building.
Yeah. So good. So good. I think one of the pieces we just talked about, money being the prime motivation, getting rich quick, those kinds of things. But I think there's also an aspect of wanting to prove yourself to your friends, to your family, we were talking about like your neighbor, but really it's like you don't know your neighbor anymore.
Yeah, right.
Like, sadly.
That's Facebook.
It's social media. Yeah. Your neighbor is your friend on social media, essentially.
Yep.
But what's your perspective about that? I think that can probably come up in, even just in some of our conversations with contractors that I've talked to who are using Congenius. Like they're in a family business or, and they're wanting to prove themselves to their dad or to their brothers or to their, you know what I mean? Like, so we see that a lot, I think, on the services we provide. What's been your experience on just like the wanting it to prove yourself to people?
This is a huge motivator. Probably we talk about money being the number one motivator, but this might be even the primary motivator. It's essentially, I'll show them kind of a mindset. And I think it comes from insecurity and ego. And the funny thing about insecurity is there's two types of insecurity, two types of pride, essentially. And one of them is this sort of self-deprecating, hard on yourself. I'm a loser kind of a mentality, which can also be based on pride because it's not identity. It's just being like, if I'm not doing well, I'm a failure. When I'm doing well, it's all about me. It's about me. Essentially, pride is about me.
Yeah.
And then there's this other one, this ego, essentially saying that, I'm way better than everyone else. What took them 20 years will take me 2 months. Kind of that mentality.
Ego comes out of like a lack of confidence or
100%.
overconfidence.
Yeah. Well, and there's also it's disconnected from experience. The smartest people I know are the most gentle in offering any kind of advice about how things should be done.
Slowest to speak. They
realize what they don't know. And that comes from this wisdom of just saying, wow, there's so many things that I don't know the more I learn. I mean, the cocky 25-year-old is running around telling everyone how things are supposed to be done. It's not age-based, but nonetheless, there's a lot of people, influencers.
It's experience-based.
But nonetheless, they think they have something. This is their first time doing it or the second time, and so therefore going to tell everyone else how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
As opposed to being very cautious. I remember this time when my dad had approached somebody and said, "Hey, would you give a talk on, your experience with something?" And he declined it and said, "No, I don't feel like I've proven that experience yet. That was a one-off thing, and we're still working through it."
Wow.
That was mature.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, "Oh, I love it. The camera, give me the limelight." I'll tell everyone how it's done. And this is the opposite of what we're seeing in social media.
Yeah, true.
We're seeing people with one-off experience. It bothers me quite a bit. You go to YouTube and you want to see how something's done, and you have most people, the highest ranking content is usually people that are kind of having fun doing it their second time.
True. Yeah, you're right.
Not some seasoned pro that's going to be as boring and dry as dust telling you, well, in step number 1, we're going to have a clean job site. Who wants to listen to that? Yeah. It's like, danger and falling off a tree. And, this is, the whistling diesel kind of destroy things in the process is going to rank higher on YouTube.
It's fun to watch them. It's entertainment, though. It's the difference.
Right.
Yeah. Not school. It's entertainment,
Yeah. And so back to the wanting to prove yourself. I think this was a little deviation there. This mentality creates this constant need for recognition and this constant need for, comparing yourself to others and overworking. I'll show them kind of a thing.
Right. I think too, when things get hard, like if ego is what it's about, like, or your business is your identity, or like the success of your business is your identity, then things crumble when they go hard or when it's hard. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah. And that leads to the unhealthy choices, where it's, so many medicating this issue is going on in businesses, whatever that is.
That's true.
I think there's another aspect of it. Let's say your identity was not tied up in your business. Like if the ego wasn't the piece of it, it was just being like, I'm here to serve people. I'm here to run like you have vision for a business. Yeah. You know when to get out. You know what to pivot on, as opposed to being like, I'm going to hammer this home. I will show them. I can't tell you how many times, Kinsey, I've seen people run with a bad idea and say, I'm going to keep doing that bad idea because I will show you that it's a good idea. Instead of having the humility to be like, I'm not tied up in that. It's not about me.
Yeah.
and it's so tempting because our identities can get tied up in our service, our product, our business, whatever it is. And it's not it.
Yeah.
Being able to say my identity is not my business.
Yeah. It's so true. It reminds me of, I played volleyball in college, and my sophomore year in college, I may have talked about this on the podcast before, but I got the yips. I don't know if you ever heard of the yips, but
Explain
baseball
the yips.
players will get the yips, so the pitcher can't even throw to the catcher. Like just cannot actually pitch, or the catcher can't throw back to the
something
pitcher.
They've done thousands of times before.
Yes, like it's muscle memory at that point.
Yeah.
But like you get so in your head because your identity is so tied in the thing that you're doing that you can't actually, like your worth is tied in your performance. Essentially, it's kind of a similar thing we're talking about. Of that moment, I had to be like, hey, actually, volleyball is not my identity. Like, who am I? Like that kind of moment of asking yourself who you are outside of what you're doing. I think is a super important point, and is the risk for people who are wanting to start a company out of wanting to prove yourself.
Yeah. And from there, recovering and to be, bragging yourself a little bit.
Well, I think ultimately what it was a fear of failure because I wanted to prove myself. Yeah. Right. But then, a couple years later, I'm like, honestly, it's glory to God in all of it. Like I'm going to give all the credit to him. But, I ended up my senior year becoming All-American, like starting setter the next year and like some of those things. So it's like, it just required that moment, kind of a feeling of, I know that's not like rock bottom, right? You can just define rock bottom for people as different, right? What does rock bottom actually mean for you versus somebody else that we don't, you know what I mean? Like that's a moving thing and not specific, not consistent for people. But it was that kind of moment of like, man, I'm going to lose my scholarship or like, or look like a failure if I don't get it together. So anyway, I think that, but I think recognizing that and figuring out who is your identity outside of what you do is key to even running a successful business and having a successful life.
Yeah.
That was
you
a
get
little
away
bit of a tangent, but
I love it. Less emotionally driven choices come from a secure identity as well. Just being like, it's not about showing, proving, telling other people how it's done. There's a certain subtle competition. A lot of you guys work with family or people you're close with. And I can relate to that. I worked with a dad for a number of years and a
brother.
And a brother, right? Exactly. And I think it's the flip with my brother. My brother's 11 years younger than me. So for him, it was the competition with me. For me, it was competition with my dad. And I remember being like a 16, 17-year-old thinking to myself, my dad's doing it wrong. What is that? You know what I mean? It's ego.
Right.
But it's also, instead of coming with the mindset of like, I want to learn the things that my dad does know and, give allowance for the things that I perceive as weaknesses, it's kind of coming at the angle of what my strengths are, or just judging ourselves by our intentions instead of our actions. It's so easy to do.
That's so easy to do.
I want to be successful, so therefore I am. This is the delusion that we can fall into.
True.
It's just being like, I will this into existence instead of being like, well, that doesn't make it so.
Right. I want it to be so easy.
So
but
many
it's
people
not.
live there.
Right.
So many people live there in their business of being like, I want a successful business. So it's almost like this disconnect from reality. And I think that's a key piece we're trying to dissect with this podcast.
Which I think you have to have a little bit of that though to like have the confidence to actually step out and do something crazy, because it is crazy and it's hard and it's all the things. So you have to have like self-belief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to believe in yourself to be able to do it. But
what is that? I mean, when you unpack like, what's arrogant and what's self-belief,
Yeah.
It's a fine line. There is a fine line between that. I think
humility, I guess.
Yeah, it's humility. Being able to learn from mistakes and be able to acknowledge them and be quick to listen to others.
No, you don't have all the answers and you're going to learn them.
And be comfortable with somebody. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have come to me and try to school me on how something's supposed to be done. And sometimes they were wrong and sometimes I was.
Yeah.
I've learned so many things from other people, but you also, there's a lot of free advice being dispensed right now that's completely worthless. But nonetheless, there's the people that are the loudest are often the ones you shouldn't be listening to.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there are those out there that you can learn a ton from.
Yeah, it's so true. I think what's the thing we talked about earlier is if you can shift from proving yourself to how do I serve others, right? I think that's a better motivation of like, hey, let's actually flip the script there and recognize, hey, I have a little bit of like, I want to prove myself. I want to prove to people that we can make this thing work. I want to, you know what I mean? I think everybody has a little bit of that. Yeah. Like, I don't think anybody's really free of that. But I think if we can flip the script and choose, hey, how do we serve people? Then I think you get the better result that you're actually looking for in terms of starting.
And how much of that is like identity driven in the sense of like wanting to please people? It's not a bad thing. Wanting to, I mean, I love making people happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's an entirely wrong thing to be driven by wanting to serve others and make other people happy. But I think where it starts getting into this like wanting to prove yourself as a motivation for why you exist in the sense of like, I am good and I am worthy and I'm lovable because I have my own business and because I'm doing all these things. That's where it crosses the line.
Yeah.
It's inward in the sense of like self-worth coming from who I am, as opposed to outward driven in the sense of I want to serve others and make their lives better. And as a part of that, I get to experience, people loving me, not because of who I am in the sense of, or what I do for them, but just because of, this is just Ben, that's Kinsey. I mean, it's not because of what we do.
Yeah. Well, and it results in less emotionally driven choices.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's good.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay. So money motivation, wanting to prove yourself to others, right? And then wanting what others have, I think, is a really big trap that's really common. We've talked about comparison a little bit, but I think that's a huge risk of, hey, I'm seeing what's happening on social media. I'm seeing somebody that I don't even know. I'm seeing a sliver of their life. We were talking about that earlier of like, how much is that actually true of what you're seeing on social media or what you're seeing, you know what I mean? And you're getting a curated piece of content that is not necessarily reality, or maybe maybe you're looking at something that's 10 years from now for you, not next year, like the quick get rich quick kind of thing, right? Like they had to, not necessarily seeing the roadmap of how someone achieved what they've achieved.
And there's a difference between maybe valuing the freedom that somebody has to spend time with their family or to give to others or something like that. And then there's an envy, a jealousy that's almost, I want that. And it's a driving force. And I think this is where things kind of fall apart when it becomes the driving force. I want to be like that person. I want to have the things they have. I want to have live the life they have. And this can be so, I mean, this can get very deep in the sense of like, I want, that truck. I want those tools. I want all these things. And it can just be a motivator behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, kind of holding it loosely, also other people's version of success. I'm like, chasing their version of success is a stupid idea.
Right.
Like it's not, it's so fragile.
Yeah. You
brought up the sliver of life you see about somebody else. I don't think Franklin meant this when he said half the truth is often a great lie, but I think it kind of applies to the situation too, is if you only see half the picture, it's such a distorted version of reality that it's a lie.
Right.
It's deceptive.
Right.
And so if that's the piece you're chasing a lie. You're chasing a sliver of what you see of somebody else's life.
So true.
You don't see the work they put into it.
Yeah.
You don't see the sacrifices they made, whether they should have or shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody's a multimillionaire, should they have, put the sacrifices they did? We met with somebody a number of years ago, and he built a very successful business and sold it. And he talked about how much he gave of his life and how much time he didn't spend with his kids and how much of a toll that took on him.
How much regret.
There was regret there. And I think that's something that you don't see either. All you see is the pretty, the flashy.
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Depends on the person. Yeah.
And it's their version of success. It's your boss, your friends, your YouTube influencer, your Instagram reel, which is designed to be attractive.
Yes. It's designed to draw you back in.
Right.
And I think the thing to maybe combat some of that is like, do you have a really clear vision for what you want your life to look like, how you want to get there? You know what I mean? Like if you don't have a vision for who you want to be, then you're going to just try to be like everybody else, right? Or find the next shiny thing or find the next material thing makes you happy for 5 seconds. You know what I mean? And then you have remorse later, or whatever. And so I think that having a clear vision is required, because the grass is not always greener, on the other side. There's a ton of work that's involved in actually achieving success or a sustainable business. Let's just say success is a moving target too, right? What success for some person is different for another, right? I want to scale a massive business, or I just want time, money, freedom, and I want a small business and I want to be a craftsman, maybe not be a, salesman and run a huge sales department, you know what I mean? Or those kinds of things. So I think that you have to know the vision for what you want your life to look like in order to like order your steps to achieve it.
My father-in-law is a very simple, plain kind of a guy. And I don't mean that in any disrespect. I admire him tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
What he values in life is to live a life that's honorable. He wants to do the right thing by God and by other people. He's the kind of person that wants to do things by the book.
Mm.
I remember this time when I was dating my wife, I was in Chicago area at the time and driving, it's like a 7.5 hour drive, 8 hour drive. And he had asked me something like, how long does it take you to get here? And I was, 6.5 hours. And he said, well, were you driving the speed limit?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, not exactly. And his comment was something like, well, maybe you want to pray about that. And, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I mean, I said, I was like, well, it shouldn't be too hard to figure out what to do. What was the right thing to do?
I know what's right.
Right. Yeah. It's not like I didn't know what was right. But I think that spoke to him. He wasn't the kind of person telling me, dictating what I should do or shouldn't do. But he wanted to live his life in such a way. What he valued was not the pretty and flashy. He really wanted to be the honorable person that when he's gone, there's going to be so many stories about that guy because he made an impact with his life. Yeah. And I'm thinking like all the things we chase, you look at any celebrity and having it all, money, whoever they want to date or marry or whoever it is, and so much like wreckage around that, like if you pick anyone, I mean, there are some healthy ones out there, but nonetheless, most of the time they're on their 7th marriage and,
totally.
Like there's so much going on there. It's like, you just personally, just turmoil, wrecked. It's like, well, why? And so the things we chase, like identifying what does that even bring? And sometimes it requires some deep thinking. And so,
and I think it allows you to say no to things too. If you have an actual vision and you can set boundaries around your vision too.
Well, let's get into healthy motivators.
Okay.
So because we're kind of already edging on healthy motivators.
I like talking about how to do it practically. Let's go.
So in starting a business or even recentering your business, because I think we're speaking to our audience of people that are thinking about running businesses or already in business. Most of the people listening to this already have a business.
Yeah, true.
And so you might be listening and saying, oh, yeah, that has been a huge motivator and you're identifying with money was or has been your primary motivator. Well, that doesn't mean you need to get out of business.
Yeah.
That means you need to recenter around, well, what are the things that should be my motivators? Why should I exist in business? You need to solve a real problem, and maybe you're already doing that. But as a primary motivator, you need to be solving a problem, in the sense of I have a clear value proposition of what I'm doing.
Yeah, create value.
Yes, yes. And so it exists, the money follows what you do.
Yep.
So the value is from that. And then as a motivator, freedom.
Yeah.
If you're not getting freedom out of your business either, it's like, well, you need to recenter around that being a motivator.
Right.
And that is freedom to live life the way you want to live life, to prioritize the things that are really important.
Yeah.
And I'm not just telling everyone else how this is supposed to be done. I mean, this is something
we have to do that. It's self-reflecting.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
That's where a lot of this kind of content comes from.
It just comes from deep pain.
I'm like over-promising. I think that was our last episode. I'm like, that's so speaking to ourselves.
In fact, our producer was like, that last episode, we talked about, I want to make sure we don't do that with this situation yesterday. I was like, that's awesome, Sam.
That's so good.
Let's not overpromise in the situation. Let's talk about serving.
Yeah.
So being able to make our lives around serving others. I mean, some of the most fulfilling moments in life for me of when I'm able to serve my spouse, my kids, people around me.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how much joy is in that, to do hard work and to do it with excellence and to do it with, putting ourselves second. Yeah.
Well, and doing it with integrity, right? I think that's got to be a motivator. I mean, or should be a motivator.
Yeah. At the end of the day, do you want the final chapter of your business to be like, you made a lot of money, but boy, he was a crook.
Yeah.
He was a wheeler and dealer.
Yeah. What do you want people to say about you? Yeah. It's like what you were talking about with your father-in-law. It's like people are going to have a lot of amazing things to say about him because he lived an honorable and a life full of integrity. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's what we want to be remembered by.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just thinking about even my dad growing up and just seeing like the faithfulness he had to my mom and to be like, just like, it was this unbreakable trust.
Not that it was always easy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, he had to make deliberate choices. It wasn't like there wasn't temptation. Like that's part of being human. Is temptation is what you do with it. Yep. That's not wrong in itself. Yeah. It's what's done with it. And I think like setting that legacy of like doing the right thing when nobody's looking is like you want to emulate it, but it's also you pass that on. I'm going to read you a journal entry from about this is back in January. Or part of it. This was in reflecting back on 2024 and 3 years into starting the current business. And my comment was, we've weathered adversity to get here, but I really believe that's how we grow as humans. Very few people stick with something long enough to experience the reward. It's just too painful, but we're not quitters. I've been stretched this year. I've had intense pressure to my shoulders, but we're stronger than we were a year ago. We're more focused. We're smarter. We've better grasp on what it takes to win. We've had all the accumulated wins over the last 3 years. And then I made this comment. It's like the first time you try to do something, it seems like it should be easier than it is. This business is not my first business, but it's the first business in its caliber. It's the first business in its product type. And so, like a lot of you guys are out there, I might be in a similar position where you're doing something new. You might have experiences that led up to it. Yeah. But you just don't know what you don't know. Right. And you're gonna learn around the way. And so many businesses bust out because of it, but we're still standing. This teamwork, that's patience, that's perseverance, that's faith. And so just reflecting back on it, I think one of the common themes in my life going back the last couple of decades is like ideas are so cheap. Yeah.
You were saying something about Thomas Edison earlier.
Yeah, he did not invent the light bulb. Somebody already came up with the concept of an incandescent bulb. What Edison had done with this team of engineers was came up with a way of actually making a light bulb work for the masses. He came up with filaments that burnt long enough for it to be a viable product. He came up with concepts of electricity delivery, so you could actually power these electric light bulbs. He came up with the concept of a vacuum bulb, having the filament in a vacuum so it wouldn't burn out because of the oxidation. And so he's more of an entrepreneur than a scientist, and he wasn't the person that came up with the idea necessarily. He was this person that perfected it and made it, So this is speaking this idea of, so many times I've got ideas pitched to me, great ideas. Yeah. We were talking about this one earlier where, I was thinking, brilliant idea. If somebody could pull it off, it would be amazing. Right. It's like, can you pull off the idea? Yeah. And this is what we're talking about, vision versus delusion. Like if you don't know what it takes and what's involved with doing it, and you're not ready to put that perseverance and level of effort into doing it, well, that could be just pipe dream.
Yeah. What are some signs that you think are, there whenever someone's looking at a potential pipe dream? Like what would you look for? I mean, I know we talked about some scenarios and some motivations, but like, what are some things that you would highlight as warnings or cautions?
Yeah. So if your dream is just a pipe dream instead of an actual vision, well, it's usually dismissive of other people's experiences. We're going to be so much better than everyone else. We're going to be so much faster than everyone else. You're younger, you're smarter, you're more talented. Yeah. This is a big red flag. Yeah. This is there's wisdom in learning from what people have done before you.
Yeah. So if you're saying I'm the man, like that's probably a warning, right?
Right?
Like, hey, let's evolve more into what can we learn from other people, right?
So many of the things that I thought should be so easy, and when you actually start doing them, you realize they're very hard. And I think that's where pipe dreams are built, is on, things are going to be so much easier. We're going to prove the world wrong.
Yeah. We've talked about accidental successes before too. I think that's kind of like a sign or a warning too, of like, maybe you have it all together. What would you define as an accidental success?
Accidental success
is kind of a contractor commute term.
Yeah,
we have a couple.
Well, and I actually stole this slightly from the Ratatouille film, where you have Linguini, who's not a chef, but he has this rat that helps him be a chef. Yes. And chef whatever tells him, congratulations on your accidental success. Then I think what he means by that is, first time, never done it before, dives in, beginner's luck, turns out an amazing product, and has no idea how it came about. And I think this happens more often than we realize. What happens is you get put in a position where everything lines up perfectly. That first job, you have the ideal client. They pay you on time. They're patient. They're easygoing. They're gracious. Their quality expectations aren't too high. You don't need to sell them. They came to you. They say, hey, can you help us with this? So you're working for somebody else. Say, hey, on the weekend, can you help him with this? And you make $5,000 in a weekend. And you think,
this is amazing.
I can clean up. $5,000 a day times 7 days.
Simple math.
So that's the next thing, is pipe dreams are built on simple math.
Yeah.
I've had so many. Well, I've never made the mistake myself.
Yeah, right.
No, it's so easy to make a formula saying, I remember as a 7 or 8 year old boy in my building my enterprise in my closet. And doing simple math and being like, okay, let's see, if we had a cattle business and the cows cost you $100 a piece, and there's 2,000 pounds of beef at $10 a pound, $20,000, dollars a cow.
Like, that's great.
Wow. Yeah. And it doesn't work that way. But nonetheless, the simple math piece, And it's laughable
Yeah.
in that extreme.
Right.
But when you actually look at serious business plans built
For
on
sure.
simple math,
For sure.
and they're flawed from the very beginning.
Well, I think that's super common, especially in the trade world, right?
Mhm.
Like you're working for a company,
Yep.
and you're an excellent tradesperson, craftsman, and then you're like, well, you see the invoice
Yes.
that goes to your customer, and you're like $115 an hour
Yeah.
or whatever for labor rate,
And I'm
for
getting
example.
28.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, I should do this on my
Somebody's
own.
cleaning up.
You know, like somebody's cleaning up. Why don't I just do that and I can get paid, my monthly expenses within a day.
Back to the accidental success. This is also the mistake is not necessarily that you had success.
Mhm.
It's that assuming that everything else will follow the same pattern.
Yeah.
The marketing, the sales, the selling process, weeding out bad customers,
Mhm.
and realizing there's scarcity, there's demand, there's
Yeah.
other competitors. There's not everyone's going to be the nice person that just says, it looks great.
Mhm.
I'm happy with that.
No two clients are the same.
Right.
Yeah.
That they had money, that they paid you on time, all the rest of those things, that you were able to source products and you're able to manage the delivery. And one thing, Kinsey, we've talked about this before in the podcast, but doing something once with excellence can be sort of a doable experience.
Mhm.
A homeowner can do something with excellence once and
Yeah.
take their time doing it.
Mhm.
Doing that many times over again consistently is where the magic is.
Yeah.
And doing it multiple times at the same time and scaling it
4
is
projects
very
at the same
difficult.
time is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So when I'm running 6-7 jobs at the same time and needing to do them all with excellence and having them all run parallel, simultaneous with multiple crews doing everything well,
that's when stuff gets
real
hard.
stuff gets very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
And you don't have to do that necessarily to be successful. You can be a one-man show and do great. I'm just, just pointing out the accidental success can be insulate us from reality.
That's good. Yeah, I think one of the things we mentioned earlier too is believing something to be true, so willing it, right?
This cannot be stressed enough. Yeah. We as humans want to believe certain things.
We do it every day. I think, as a human, it doesn't have to be business related. I was talking earlier, I was like, well, I want to vacuum my house in 30 minutes, but it takes me 2 hours or whatever,
To clean
something
your
as
house,
simple as that,
Yeah. I've seen this mistake pan out in other people's lives and in my own life. And I think it's a daily tension almost of being like taking that pause and saying, do I have the details here in order to actually understand what it is that I'm committing here to, or even understand, what it is that I want to be real? This goes back to where we started with money. I see money. And so therefore I can make money. And I, is sort of where these sort of like these things all tie together, this trend of like, I can will things into existence instead of realizing there might be sleepless nights. There might be hard work. There might be doing without. I really want to unpack with you in a separate episode this whole concept of what does it take to turn the dream into reality? Because I think there's an aspect of discipline and tenacity and counting the cost ahead of time and being in the right group of people that can challenge you, but also in a healthy way. And I think there's so much more to dreams. I think dreams are so important. And I don't want to put a wet blanket on anybody's dreams from this podcast today. I think what you're doing today is hard. It's difficult. It's challenging. And it's incredible what you guys are doing. It's just, sometimes it's just this recentering of why is it that we're doing what we're doing? Are we doing things for the long haul? Are we doing things to really make an impact that when we look back in 10 years, we're glad we did it? Yeah. And we didn't sacrifice our souls, our families, the people around us, the relationships in order to make it happen.
So good. So good. I think one other thing we just wanted to mention before we ended is that kind of final thought, right? That felt very final thought to me. I was like, that is like a ending, solid point,
Period.
But one thing we did want to mention is we're going to move back to bi-weekly podcasts. So it's kind of in the same theme of what we're talking about here. Of like, we want to provide excellent podcasts, but really like we want to build an amazing software product, estimating product for contractors. And so obviously this podcast takes time out of our week, right? And so like really just trying to, again, back to that kind of like re-shifting and re-looking at our vision and we want to do the podcast and we're going to continue doing the podcast, but we are going to move back to bi-weekly just to give more margin.
And I think we learned from our audience as well in that category is the 4 episodes a month was just too much content. And I think also to what you're saying, Kinsey, as just the quality of the content
Yeah.
too. If we can put that little extra bit of time into that and hopefully deliver a better show for you guys. And also, I think be sharp, be there instead of being distracted by everything else going on in our lives. Sure. So hopefully don't disappoint too many people.
Yeah. So we'll see you back in 2 weeks.
See you back in 2 weeks. Yes.
Yeah. We'll catch you guys later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.